Well, he didn't say he tripped, but he bows, and oh, my dagger fell out. Right? And then what does he do? Stabs him in the tummy. And does he die right away? No, he's lays it, as the text says, is wallowing in his guts as people pass by. And they rally the force. Now who's in command of the army? I heard it. Joab. Joab's in charge. Well, isn't that a little coincidence there, isn't it? Joab kills a man. Has this happened before? You know, well, Joab's got a way of doing business. He got a way of doing business. And we'll look at that a little bit tonight. So we pick up here in 14 of chapter 20. And Sheba passed through all the tribes of Israel to Abel at Beth-makkah. And all the, however you want to pronounce that, Bitrites, assembled and followed him in. And all the men who were with Joab came and besieged him at Abel at Beth-makkah, and they cast up a mound against the city, and it stood against the rampart. And there they battered the wall to throw it down. What did they do? Siege. They did siege warfare. And in this day and age, they didn't have trebuchets, and they didn't have catapults, and they didn't have, oh my goodness, what's some of the other stuff that you would have for siege warfare? Huh? That would be a trebuchet or a catapult. Ballistas. Ballistas shoot long bolts, and you could break through the city's gates, or you could break the walls because they're giant steel bolts. So they didn't have those things. They did have the concept of ramming things. I mean, that's pretty basic. But in this case, how did they do the ram? Did they roll up to the gate and try to beat the gate down, or did they?
Usually a bunch of guys with a pole.
Well, that's somehow, in this case, instead of trying to breach the wall low, they built a siege ramp up to the high part of the wall to where they could do what? Breach the wall high. What do you think the thickest part of a wall is? It's all day long at the base. When we were in Italy going around, you would see the remnants of the ancient fortresses, and the base of the walls are massive. Because when you go up, something's got to support the up, right? So where's the weakest part of the wall? Above you. Well, you could sit with a battering ram all day at the base of that wall. You may eventually break through it. But if you build a siege tower to the weak parts, you could breach the wall and then enter the city from the breach side. And so that's what they do. Siege war, a lot of the other siege engines that you will see, they don't come along until, you'll see maybe Alexander the Great, he has some of that. The ballista, I think he, huh? Romans were very good at it, and they had great, but they still use this very same method. When they took the fortress mountain, or the mountain fortress of Masada, they built a siege ramp to the top, and then they took a battering tower to the top of the wall, breached the top of the wall, and found out that all the inhabitants had already killed themselves. So, but this is not an uncommon siege practice. Very basic. Now, how long do you think it takes to build a siege ramp?
Long time.
Takes some time, especially depending on the height of the wall. And here's the thing about the siege ramp. Do you think that when you build the ramp, that the people in the wall will leave you unmolested? What do you think? Is it a mystery to the people inside the wall what you're doing? I mean, you know, the way the text kind of presents is like going, hey, what you guys doing? We're building a siege ramp. Uh-huh. Why? And we're going to see this conversation. It's no secret what's going on. There's thousands of men surrounding them. They decide to build this siege ramp, and so you have this very interesting conversation that comes up. Then a wise woman, write this down, ladies, right here. This is the only time this phraseology is ever, no, I'm kidding. By the way, text confirmed, mother-in-law did get on a plane. We were waiting in the service to hear from your text. You never sent it.
Oh, sorry.
That your mom was safely on the plane.
Okay.
I live in trouble, folks. Don't worry. This is not uncommon, right?
She's safely on the plane. She's good. Promise.
She's somebody else's problem now. Nope. A wise woman called from the city and saying, listen, tell Joab to come here that I may speak to you. Now, if you're Joab, what do you think's going on? Because again, when you're building a siege ramp, will the inhabitants of the city leave you unmolested? If I can get you to get close enough to the wall to hear me, what might I also be able to do from the wall? Shoot you with an arrow. So she comes up and says, listen, tell Joab to come here that I may speak to you. And he came near to her, and the woman said, are you Joab? And he answered, I am. And she said to him, listen to the words of your servant. And he answered, I am listening. Very formal language here now. You notice that? It's not like, anyhow. I always find it interesting how they write that down. Then she said, they used to say in former times, let them ask counsel at Abel. And so they settled the matter. Now, that's a very weird phrase. You want to happen to know what they're talking about here? Any clue? Any concept? This was a city in Israel where it wasn't diviners. They weren't in there practicing some type of weird mediation, but they seemed to have the ability to kind of synthesize answers to aid people in understanding of things. And it wasn't of witchcraft or anything like that. So people would come down and they would talk to the wise. And notice it was the text makes it very interesting to say that it's not just simply a woman, but a wise woman. And here in a little bit, she is going to talk to the city in her wisdom. And so that people came because this was a very smart town. You were able to get answers from these people. Apparently they didn't know how to shoot an arrow at the people building a ramp, but hey, not everybody can be a quarterback. But they used to say to come down to the city to get matters settled. Am I one of those and I'm one of those who's a peaceful and faithful Israelite, yet you seek to destroy the city that is a mother in Israel. You seek to destroy the city and this mother who is within the city and all that it has to benefit Israel, and we don't know why. Why would you swallow up the heritage of the Lord? And Joab answered, far be it from me, far be it that I should swallow up or destroy. That is not true. But a man from the hill country of Ephraim, called Sheba, the son of Bichri, has lifted up his hand against King David. Give up him alone, and I will withdraw from the city. What do you think of fair trade?
Usually not many people survive the siege.
Not very many people survive the siege. So if you're the besieged city, and this is the demand, now he fled there with his own people and his own men, but if you're the besieged city and this guy is in the city, what do you think is going to happen to Sheba? Yeah, he's not going to live very long. Notice what she says. The woman said to Joab, behold, his head shall be thrown to you over the wall. Notice she didn't mention the rest of him. So what do you know of what is going to happen to this traitor? Pretty basic. They're going to kill him and cut off his head and throw it to Joab. So let's see here. So he blew then the woman went to all the people in her wisdom. So she went and convinced the people in the wisdom that she had of the fact that, hey, look, if we don't give this guy up, Joab, who's a very skilled commander, and all the men outside the wall are going to breach our walls, kill all of us, and kill this guy. Or we can kill this guy and Joab will go away. Well, how do you know Joab is going to go away? Well, he said he's going to go away. Fair enough. And they cut off the head of Sheba, the son of Bichri, and they threw it out to Joab. So he blew his trumpet, and they dispersed from the city. Every man returned to his own home, and Joab returned to Jerusalem to the king. Now you would figure that there should be some type of punishment that is going to await Joab, right? What did Joab do to become commander of the army again? Well, he didn't really kill the general. He did what? We talked about this morning. He murdered the general. He murdered this guy. He also did the same thing to Abner. Remember that? Hey, come on outside. I got something I'm going to show you outside. It's out near the gate. No, you don't need to bring your weapons with me. I'm a peace-loving man. You don't go for long walks with Joab, with him and his brother, anywhere without 20 other dudes that are your friends with you. All right? So you figure there's some type of punishment waiting for him. Right? And Joab returned to Jerusalem to the king. Verse 23. Now Joab was in command of the army of Israel, and Benaiah the son of Jehoiada was in command of those folks, and Adoram was in charge of the forced labor. Yes, the forced labor. What's another way of saying forced labor? You got it. And Jehoshaphat, the son of that guy, was the recorder, not the little white thing that you play, but write down. Okay. And Sheva was a secretary. Zadok and Abiathar were priests, and Ira the Jairite was also David's priest. Don't know who he is. This is a reference the text makes to him. That's about it. What happens to Joab? Huh? Goes back to his old job. Now you would figure, think about this, there'd be some type of punishment for Joab. Right, in our culture, let me ask you this question. In our culture, should there be immediate punishment? That's how we would do it, right? I mean, we're not going to take, like, what's the guy, General Flynn, we're not taking him out and shooting him or stabbing him in the gut. We just accept his resignation, and off to the lecture circuit he goes. Yeah. But we kind of have this concept that when somebody does something like this, there should be immediate reciprocity, right? Is there? Yeah. Is there here in this text? Does Joab escape punishment? I suspect you already know where I'm heading. No? No? You're saying the obvious. Does David punish Joab? 1 Kings chapter 2. 1 Kings chapter 2. 1 Kings chapter 2, starting in verse 28. This is after David's death. David's death is recorded in 1 Kings chapter 2, verse 10. Somebody want to read 28 through 35, I think it is? Yeah, through 35.
Now the news came to Joab, for Joab had followed Adonijah, although he had not followed Absalom. And Joab fled to the tent of the Lord and took hold of the horns of the altar. It was told King Solomon that Joab fled to the tent of the Lord, and behold, he is beside the altar. And Solomon sent Benaiah, the son of Jehoiada, saying, Go fall upon him. So Benaiah came to the tent of the Lord and said to him, Thus the king has said, Come out. But he said, No, for I will die here. And Benaiah brought the king word again, saying, Thus spoke Joab, and thus he answered me. And the king said to him, Do as he has spoken, and fall upon him, and bury him, that you may remove from me and from my father's house the blood which Joab shed without cause. The Lord will return his blood on his own head, because he fell upon 2 men more righteous and better than he, and killed them with the sword, while my father David did not know it. Abner the son of Ner, commander of the army of Israel, and Amasa the son of Jether, commander of the army of Judah. So shall their blood return on the head of Joab, and on the head of his descendants forever. But to David and his descendants, and his house, and his throne, may there be peace from the Lord forever. Then Benaiah the son of Jehoiada went up and fell upon him, and put him to death, and he was buried at his own house in the wilderness. The king appointed Benaiah the son of Jehoiada over the army in his place, and the king appointed Zadok the priest in the place of Abiathar.
Does Joab receive punishment for his activity? Does Joab receive punishment at the time in which he kills these men? One of the interesting things about when we look at how God works and mediates justice and how we would mediate justice, we want justice to be immediate. Think about it. Every time we have been offended, every time something has happened to us, we want immediate retribution, right? What is time to God? But if you also were to look at chapter 2 of 1 Kings over in verse 5, David is relaying this information to Solomon. That in times of peace, Joab killed 2 men and looked to solve a blood debt from a war grudge. That's not allowable. Blood debts are only allowed to be followed through if it's a peacetime blood grudge. In wartime, that's just killing on the battlefield. Otherwise, you end up with this weird Hatfields and McCoy type thing where they're trying to wipe each other out. And notice what happens. Who does Joab rally behind this time? The heir, or the rightful king, or the rival? He rallies around the rival. And it makes it very clear that he supported who? That dude with the weird name, right? But he did not support Absalom. So he supported Adonijah, anyhow, however you want to pronounce that, and not support Absalom. So early on when you had the king, where David was king, he backed David against Absalom, but now that Solomon is now king, he backs Solomon's brother for the crown. Now this is also in keeping with how kings come into power. When a king comes into power, does he clean house? Yeah. Out with the old and in with the new. And Joab, why does he die? Let's take a look at it. Why does he die? Yeah. He refuses to exit the Lord's house, and so Solomon sends in the man that's going to replace him and kill him. Now, do you see kind of some poetic justice in that?
It's a way to get promoted.
And it's a way to get promoted. It's almost like the Star Trek episode where you had evil Captain Kirk. Anyone? Star Trek episode, evil Captain Kirk? Where I like Evil Squad better. No? Where's Delight? She's usually here. She watches these shows, doesn't she? No? If I say Star Wars, these little geeks would be all thrilled. Star Wars! Just like that. Huh? Is there any? Yeah, well, he kills all the little ones, the halfling. I don't know what they call them. Younglings, yeah. Halflings would be the Hobbit. So, sorry, we digress into Middle Earth. And so we look at this, and notice, here's the thing that I pull from this text. Joab does not receive any punishment for his activity until he is much older. Does justice escape the head of Joab? No. Did God forget that Joab was guilty? Did David forget that Joab was guilty? See, a lot of times we wonder, how come we don't get the punishment that is due the person the minute when it happens? And at times we want it the instantaneous now. But if you look at how the text works, rarely do you see this instantaneous result. You will on a couple occasions, but in many cases you'll see where the punishment is meted out long after the fact. Notice David's household is still meandering through this bloodbath in which this sword will never leave. So it's a short section. I know it was when we were looking at it, but I didn't want to get into the other chapter of 21, so I want to round out with that one, because then we end up with a couple of different other aspects going on as well. Some more war, some more killing, some more dead people. Then David sings a song. He has a hat with a cane on it. Y'all aren't listening. Questions up to this point. Then there's some more death. David's song goes on for a while. I bet you can't put it to music.
Wait till I grab it.
Oh, wait the music. Okay.
Sounds just like more Old Testament stuff.
It goes on for a chapter and a fourth. Yeah, it's a long song. It's almost like listening to Indigada Vida uncut. 25-minute long song. No? No?
I said you could play it during the baptism.
Play the song.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. You've listened to the all 25 minutes? Yeah. I was driving home from Dallas and it played, and it lasted all the way till I got to the driveway. 25-minute long drive, yeah. That was all free. Any other questions?
It's only 6:30, or do you feel okay?
I can go on.
It's just early.
Well, I can't help it if people won't ask me questions. It's not my fault. It's like pulling teeth.
I'll just make a comment.
Okay, make a comment.
Okay, so I'm watching a forensic show, like a show on TV.
Yep.
This guy breaks into a house and does horrible things to a woman and slaughters her and escapes for 27 years before the police track him down. Justice deferred is justice denied anyway. Even if they catch him and eventually he dies, but they're going to take a 67-year-old man and put him in jail or execute him. That doesn't seem to repay the life that he took.
Right.
And I know that in religion, that if not in this world, then in another, folks get balanced. Judgment comes.
Right. And I would reference back to kind of what I was talking about this morning. The judgment isn't, or the punishment isn't against necessarily or for the recouping of the life lost, but because the individual strikes the image bearer of God. In Joab's case, none of these men were not at war with him. These men were actually allies at the time he kills them. They were enemies prior to, but now that peace is declared, they actually should be allies. And so instead of putting things away and burying grudges, Joab buries grudges all right. He just buries the grudge and the guy with the grudge and the axe that he used to kill it. And so I think you have that kind of concept in the Old Testament. It's a repayment for the life that's lost. It's punishment for the treachery and the murder that he committed. And in that case, there is no real time limit for that aspect of the punishment phase. I think Joab had thought that he might have escaped it all. and now in his older age went and clung to the Lord and said, help me out, as all scoundrels tend to do, right? So, okay, I was hearing myself. I was hearing myself, and I wasn't talking. And I was wondering if I should take medicine or not. Y'all all heard me speaking too, right? Quiet you. Why don't you go watch some Smurfs or something? Any other questions or observations? Because now it's 6:36.
Yeah, you go back and just think, all this wouldn't have happened if David would not have peeked over the...
Yeah, all this goes back to chapter 11. All this goes back to the sin that he commits, to the father-in-law, or was it his grandfather of Bathsheba. All this is stirred up because of all this. You also see where this is stirred up. Let's just say, okay, he does the adultery, but that's it. Had he stopped and punished Absalom when Absalom killed Amnon, this could have stopped. Had he punished Amnon when he raped Tamar, this could have stopped. Notice how this builds to this point that we get here. And remember, we had this phrase that he was a man after God's own heart. And he still is, but whew, does he have some...
being king to take care of his family.
He was. And we're going to see where that is going to be thrown into upheaval again. I see a hand. I see that hand. Yes, I see that hand.
Just in a comment, it seems like, I'm going to say before that, strong leader, decisive general as David was on the battlefield, he seemed to have been exactly the opposite when it came to family.
He seemed very accommodating to his family, too. Because in battle, he seemed to have a very ruthless prowess, did he not? When he was with the Philistines, he would go and destroy entire cities and then blame and say, oh, no, we weren't raiding near there. We were raiding in the Negev. We were down in the south. And yet, when his own family, he seems fairly free and easy with that.
Even like, things like crimes, somebody comes and says, hey, listen, I helped finish off Saul. Immediate judgment.
Yeah.
I feel like that had been Joab, it would never happen.
Now, well, that's a good point because Joab does do that. He does strike an illegitimate king, but David had, even remember when David becomes king and you have the civil war between Judah and the 11 other tribes, David didn't allow the men that struck down the head of the coalition against him to live. But Joab lived. And he allowed Absalom to live after he struck down the heir apparent.
Wasn't Joab left-handed?
No, I don't think he was. I just think...
Left-handed guy that, when he came in, his right,
I think that's Ehud, the left-handed Jew, the left-handed judge. He would have been a Jew to been... Yeah. He would have been a Jew by birth, but it's... but here's the thing. He doesn't do that with Absalom against Amnon, although he should have. So, yeah, that's a good point. Any other points or suggestions or questions that I can't answer? I was waiting to hear myself again. No? Okay, great. I almost wanted to go Bueller.
I did do that during my Sunday school lesson this morning. So.
Bueller. Do y'all know what the reference is to Bueller? No? No, Ferris Bueller's Day Off. It's a great... Delight should watch that one. There's no violence in that movie. None. Ferris Bueller's Day Off. She would cackle all the way through it. She would. I can pull it up on Netflix. She can come down. We'll pop popcorn. Let's pray. Gracious Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day and for this opportunity to come before you. Heavenly Father, as we continue to finish out with 2 Samuel, and how you make a mess turn into what you want it to, in spite of those who are trying to make the mess. And for the example of David, and the fact that he is the best king Israel has, and yet he is just as human as the rest of us. And so we ask for, continue to keep that example before us. We ask for these things in your name we pray. Amen. All right, let's do prayer requests.